doesn't feel like it's in this decade at all. Hey, hi, hello, how are you? I'm Pia. Today we're going to be talking about Turtles All the Way Down, the book and the movie. So a little while ago, and by a little while ago, I mean years ago now, I started a series on my channel where I talk about books and their movie/series adaptations, and I kind of review them and talk about them in broad strokes and compare and contrast them and do that sort of thing. That video concept essentially evolved into a different style of video where I actually show you my reactions to those adaptations. However, I lost all the audio for my reactions to this video and my reactions to reading the book. So we're going to do an old school style video where I just sit down and talk about the book Turtles and the movie. And I will be calling it Turtles in this whole video because Turtles All the Way Down is too long of a title. So I do have to say, I read the book 2 days ago. I watched the movie yesterday. I am very fresh. My history with John Green is kind of like funny because I wasn't exactly like in the craze in like 2014. Like I wasn't in the Tumblr Fault in Our Stars 2014 life, but I did end up reading them when I was in maybe late middle school, so around 2016, like when the craze started to subside a little bit, the movies were starting to come out and stuff like that. I started to read John Green, and my favorite John Green book has always been Looking for Alaska. I did a whole review on that. Still think about it to this day. Turtles All the Way Down obviously came out like later. It's John Green's latest novel. And I read that when I was in high school. I was in sophomore year of high school. And it meant a lot to me at the time. I think there's some really great representation. Some things that just like stuck with me was like the anxiety representation in that book, because I am someone who has anxiety, and that to me like reigned true. And I know John Green was writing in an own voice's perspective about OCD and anxiety, so all those things were great and I really appreciated them at the time. And then I kind of forgot about the book. I kind of forgot about the book, forgot there was gonna be an adaptation. I got focused on other things, and then this adaptation came out. Really like so odd that this movie came out in 2024 because it's so like in the canon of the 2010s to me. Like it just doesn't feel like it's in this decade at all. You might feel that when you watch the movie because it just feels so, I shouldn't say it feels like dated. The way John Green writes characters and the stories that he tells with those characters just feels like they're of a different time. So it's really interesting that this came out in 2024, the year of our Lord. If you're unaware and haven't watched it, please watch the Turtles movie on Max before you watch this, because I am going to spoil everything that happens. I'm going to spoil everything that happens in the book and everything that happens in the movie. So watch or read those things. If you don't care, don't. I think a lot about like when I watch movies or read books, like what I would write a paper on if I were to write a paper. Oh, so English major of me. But like if I were to write a paper on this, like what I would write a paper on. And I think something that really sticks out to me about this story, the book and the movie, is the lack of plot, which I think a lot of people get turned off by. I've read like Goodreads reviews of the book and they're like, where's the plot? Like what's going on? And like, honestly, who knows? It's up to you to decide. It's a choose your own adventure. It's not a plot heavy book, which I think really confuses a lot of especially like YA readers that aren't used to reading like literary fiction or character driven stories in any capacity. So it makes no sense for the genre. But I'm here to argue that it has too much plot. Yes, I know, it's crazy. I don't think it has too much plot in general, but I think that it doesn't need to have a plot. That's my argument more so, because I think that the most compelling, most interesting, most stick with you parts of the story are the characters and the journey of Aza, the main character. And like, who cares? I sound like so annoying when I say that, but like, who cares about this like missing billionaire? Not me. I may be a little biased because I generally hate with a passion mysteries. And I don't think this is a mystery book. I don't think it's tagged as mystery. Don't tag this book as mystery. The fuck? No. This is not a mystery book. So like, why is there a mystery embedded in it? Why do we forget about it in the middle of the story? Because it's unnecessary. Because it's unnecessary. This could have just been Aza dilly-dallying through life, somehow like reconnects with Davis through any other means, doesn't matter. And they reconnect. Maybe he doesn't give her $50,000. Ever thought about that? Maybe he doesn't fucking sugar daddy the crap out of this teenage girl. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe he doesn't. Maybe she just goes on living her life. Like, maybe that's the plot of the story. But alas, it is not. So we obviously have to talk about the missing billionaire subplot of this book. So it starts with, I don't even want to say the inciting incident, because like it's so, like, inciting incident of what? Like, of what? The inciting incident, I guess, in this book is that this billionaire, I don't remember his name, Davis's dad, he goes missing. And he's a bad guy. Like period, he's a bad guy. He's like literally like running, like goes missing to avoid going to jail. Like criminal behavior. Like what do you mean? So this prompts our two main characters, Daisy and Aza. I'm counting Daisy as a main character because Lord, did she take my breath away. I love her. And Daisy's like, they're offering a reward for information. You used to know his son. What if we go do some investigating? And like, I have never seen such a flimsy plot in my life. This is the flimsiest like excuse. Like we're gonna talk about like class and privilege as like major topics of the Turtles universe, which I really want to get into, but I don't feel like it's a strong enough reason to be like, we're gonna go investigate this billionaire's disappearance off of like nothing. Like if they were like doing like a Good Girl's Guide to Murder, like they were like already into like true crime or like they were in a forensics class or something like that was going on in their life, that would make sense. Like that would be a good excuse, but like nothing like that is happening. So it's so strange. And then they go investigating, they remember the camera and then like the camera finds the picture and they're in the woods and then they meet Davis and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, but what I want to say more than this and why I really believe that this book could carry its own weight without this plot is because the entire middle section, like the second third of this book, the second act is completely lacking in this story. So basically at some point, Davis gives $100,000 to Aza, $50,000 for her, $50,000 for Daisy to drop it. And that's like the last we hear about it for a while. So like, why did it need to happen? I don't know. Like, I'm not here to suppose. I don't fucking know. Like, isn't that so convenient? I hate to be that bitch, but like, isn't that so convenient that he just is like, here's $100,000. Just forget about why this book started and let's make out. Because literally, is that not what Davis is saying? We're gonna talk about my problems with that. Anyway, the only semblance of remembrance that sometimes I like think about the way I construct sentences in my head and I'm like, that's probably like not how anyone else would approach a sentence. But anyway, there is like a bit of lingering things from this plot in the book, which is that Noah, Davis's brother, new character alert, new character just dropped, is having a difficult time dealing with his father's disappearance and hasn't let it go and is asking for Aza to look for more clues. And they have this cute little relationship and they're like going back and forth trying to find out more things. Adorable. Great. Love it. Okay. I think that's honestly like so great because like it draws such great parallels between like Aza's own grieving process for like her father who just died. Well, just died. I don't know when he died. Her father who died. And Noah's like grieving process for his father who's missing. And like, I really like that. Like little combo. I think that's a cute little like matchup. If they were like in a sitcom, I'd be like, this matchup is cute and I like it. I like that. In the movie, that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. The only thing that happens is that Noah does give the clue about the jogger's mouth to Aza, which we do forget about for about 45 minutes of the movie. So take your pick. Which one's better? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not here to impose an opinion on you. I'm just here to give you the facts as I found them, okay? That's kind of really all I have to say about the billionaire subplot. Obviously, it ends sort of tragically with the death of Davis's father, presumed suicide, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. We're not like told how to feel about it, and I genuinely like don't know how we're supposed to feel about it because obviously over the course of the story, we've gotten closer to Davis. Maybe you have. Not me personally, but maybe you have. And maybe you feel for him more and like having this absentee father and poor little rich boy or whatever he's going through. I don't know. Live your dirty. I don't know. But yeah, neither like the book or the movie like tells us how to deal with this information, but it's also like very nearing to the end of the story. So it's like just leaves you with like a weird thing to think about. Like, I don't know, he was a bad guy and like I don't feel a lot for it, but you know what, that's okay. Moving swiftly along, we obviously have to talk about the falling for a billionaire's son romance side plot. This is a huge part of the movie. I think it's a subplot of the book. Obviously Davis is a billionaire's son. Now if there's one thing I know about a billionaire's son, he's hiding money in those Pop-Tart boxes, just like Hannah Marin is hiding that money in that lasagna box, okay? So he is. And okay, aside from the money, I'll get to the money, I'll get to his house, I'll get to his privilege, we'll get to it. But Davis comes back into Aza's life because of his missing father. And they did, like in the book, like they were childhood friends. In the movie, they like went to summer camp together once. I'll let you decide which is grounds for childhood friends to lovers. So it's kind of giving childhood friends to lovers, like a little bit. So they reconnect and he's like, I hope she's not just in it for the money. And she's like, yeah, I was. Gotta be honest, queen, I was in it for the money. And then he just gives her $50,000. And you know what? That's great. Maybe I hate it so much because like there isn't someone, I don't have my own Davis sugar daddy to give me $50,000 just to not investigate a murder, not investigate a disappearance when I'm not like a cop. Like I have no talent in doing such. So maybe that's why. Maybe I'm salty. Maybe I'm salty that I don't have $50,000. It's very possible. He gives just poor little rich boy, and like I get it. Like I get it. Your father like was absentee father vibes. Like he abandoned you. Like he didn't really care about you. He obviously like left all his money to this freaking reptile. Not a reptile, a dinosaur. What is it? A pterodactyl? And this is where my brain starts melting. Anyway, so he leaves it all to like a reptile and not to his like children. Okay, crazy, really crazy. I mean, and that's sad. Like that's sad. It's sad that you're like on your own as like a teenager and you're whatever, like living your life. That's sad. I just feel like the way that their relationship progresses in the book is like really natural and lovely, as like it's kind of like it feels like a modern romance and a modern day teen love story. I think it's like very sweet. Especially like I know I haven't like talked at all about like Aza's anxiety or OCD. I'll get to it. The way he like approaches Aza's anxieties and like tries his best to like not even like calm her down or like help her cope. He just like is like so like they just have this like really cute relationship that's like mostly like over text and FaceTime and like things that make Aza more comfortable than like being face to face and being in person, because like a lot of her anxiety comes from like being that close and being close and intimate with another person. So they have like such cute like text threads and like they just sit on FaceTime and stare at each other. Like it gives like that scene in Normal People where they're on Skype and they fall asleep together. Like it's so great and it's so cute. That's like in the book. In the movie, like they do text some, but it's not like, they don't have like the cute moments. Like they don't have like the little like, oh my gosh, like looking at the stars in the telescope kind of moments. And they don't have like the staring on the FaceTime moment where they're just not saying anything. But you know what they do have? They do have that one cringe ass scene where he's texting her and he's like, I like your body. The fuck? I'm sorry, what? And he's like, I really like your butt. Okay, bootylicious. What? Like literally what? So strange. Teenagers are whack. I don't know. That scene's in the movie. But you know what is in the movie? Something that honestly grinded my gears like none other. Something that made me stop the presses, hit the pause button and look around and just like touch grass, like plant my feet in the earth and be like, this is not real. Just took me out of the movie experience. So obviously I'm talking about when Davis himself, Taylor Swift himself, took a private jet to fucking Chicago, took Aza to Chicago on his private jet, Taylor Swift looking ass, and then like took her to her favorite professor's lecture on philosophy, and Debbie Ryan was there. Let's unpack that. I was trying to be like, sipping on my pumpkin spice latte, but it's not a latte. It's a cold brew. So, hello. Anyway, so one thing I hate about this is just I hate private jet users in general. I just don't support them. I think they're doing bad things for the environment. So there's that. Obviously, like, think about your footprint. Sorry. Like, it's so insane to me. It's so insane to me. It's like, and I gotta tell you, I'm sure I've seen this on Tinder. I'm sure I've seen someone who's like, I'm a pilot. I can take you anywhere. I can take you places, baby girl. And it's like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is so insane. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. It's like their first date. Like, they went on a double date to Applebee's and then they went to Chicago. Like, what? And it's so crazy because they're like children. They are children. They are young adults, okay? They're not even adults. They're like 17, 16, whatever. Like, how I like to frame it is like, Davis knows he's not getting any of his father's money and eventually they're gonna find his father and he's not gonna get any of the money. And he's just going on a spending spree. Like, that would be more funny to me. And like, I would like it if they like address that more, because like him like giving over the money and like stuff like that, like it is all in this name of like giving less to this random like reptile and like honestly like endangering this reptile. It's not a reptile. So I do like that, but I wish he said that like on the plane. POV, you're Aza. Pulling up, he's like, take the day off school. Rebel. Delinquent, making her cut school. Sorry. Like, this is me not endorsing cutting class. Guys, I'm so out of school now, I don't even remember cutting class. It never happened, guys. Well, maybe we can move on from the private jet of it all and just say that he really was really underdeveloped in the movie. So it was just kind of a comedy of errors in a way, of just like, he's being more rich and privileged, sugar daddy-like. And he also just like, the way he was like, I need you to like be with me up close. Okay. I kind of hated that. I kind of hated that moment. That's because Aza's baby girl and protect her at all costs. I didn't like Davis in the movie. In the book, I could have taken him or leaving him. Taking him or leaving him. Since we're talking about side characters and side plots, something that I really, really love in this story, in the book and the movie, more so in the book, obviously, Aza's mom. Aza's mom, so freaking cute. I love Aza's mom. Obviously she's grieving her husband, Aza's grieving her dad, and Aza's mom, math teacher extraordinaire, is just trying her best. It's just trying her best. Like, it's such a lovely example of like a parent doing her best. And like, I love how she talks to her daughter and how she's like constantly checking in, and Aza in her head is like, this is not how I want her to check in about my anxiety, but like, I know it's just because she cares, and like, you know. And then with her like overprotectiveness about Davis, like, why are you dating a billionaire? You can't go out with him. Like, I need to meet him first, like whatever. Like, all of that in the book like was so great. And I do think in the movie like there's a little bit of it, but honestly like there like isn't enough time. Well, for a movie that has no plot in the middle, is there time? I don't know. Maybe there's not enough time for like to develop the mom's relationship. But what I really love that like carried over from the book to the movie is the mom just being like, I'm trying my best, and there's no book on like, well, maybe there is. Maybe I should write it. There's no like right way to like, and be a parent to a daughter with anxiety and OCD and stuff like that. So she's just like trying her best. And I just really love that so much, because you can see just like how much she cares about her daughter. Like, they just so briefly talk about like when she's like literally missing, like literally MIA on that private jet trip. Like, her mom doesn't know where she is and she's not answering. Like, there's such a brief like moment between them, but I really just wish there was more of it, because that's so scary. And like, especially if you like are worried about like your daughter having anxiety and like spiraling and stuff, like it's so scary to like not know where they are. Anyway, but more on the dad. The dad's role is, let's say, duller in the movie, because we obviously have his car. So Aza has his car, which she drives, and she's very protective over it, and it's like her baby, and like that's kind of her little symbol of her dad in the movie. However, in the book, she also has his phone, and she like scrolls through photos, and like it kind of goes back to this idea the mom kind of points out in the movie, I believe, where she's like, I just had this like lovely kid that loved like playing around and like having a good time, and then suddenly you know, it wasn't like that anymore. I said that really bad. Kind of like Aza scrolling back on this phone to see all these photos and stuff. This was like a big thing for her. Obviously, when the car crash happens, the phone breaks, and it's like a big loss for her. So like, it's doubly a loss of like the car and the phone. And yeah, it's not in the movie. It's fine. It's one of those like details that's like, it's not that big of a deal, like honestly, but I really liked it as a detail. And I do think like it helped like add to Aza's character of like, she is also like in a process of grieving. Like, they kind of mention it with like her therapist scenes, where she's like, I think this all brings back to your death of your dad. And she's like, you're such a therapist, you need to stop. Like, but yeah, just overall like her dad's death is like not that important in the movie, which I wish it was more emphasized. Well, grief is something I always like reading about and watching stories about, because I think it's so interesting and no one does it the same way, and it's never the same way twice. It's just something I find fascinating. But I feel like they were like, we gotta have a handle on everything else that's going on in the mental health journey of Aza. We don't need to deal with so much of the grief, which is fair. I think I'm gonna honestly talk about the anxiety and OCD representation last, because of just like the order of which I'm thinking about things. I'm kind of going from like the peripheral level to like the center of the story. Does that make sense? The last kind of like other side thing I wanted to talk about is Daisy's character and the friendship in this book. This is a book about friendship. This is a story about friendship. Like, I love John Green, and I do have to say, like, the romances in his books did leave like an imprint on my brain. I know they did, okay? If there's like a day that goes by that I don't think about Pudge and Alaska, like there isn't, you know what I mean? I do know like maybe some people like read his books for the romance, and that's fair, that's fine. Like, you're live your best life. Like, honestly, these are books for teenagers. So I think like part of the like thing that's great about John Green books is like there's a little bit of everything, and like a lot of people can just find what they want in it. So obviously if you're looking for romance, there's going to be a little romance in the books. It's not something that I particularly look for in adulthood, but it's a YA book. So like what am I gonna say? But I do think as I get older and I reread John Green's books, or I reread just any other like YA books or series that I might have loved in my youth, or new ones that have come out even, I am just finding how important and how much I love the friendships in those stories. Daisy and Aza's friendship is so great. And what I love kind of most about this, which I don't think many people would say is a reason that they love a friendship's plotline, is I love that they have a huge fight. They have this huge fight in the car because Aza finds out that Daisy, her best friend, fanfic writer extraordinaire, Ray Chewbacca fanfic, crazy, love it. She finds out that she wrote a character who's essentially Aza, and she's like this huge burden, she messes everything up, and like the way she writes about her is just like she's annoyed with her existence, and Aza's like, you didn't even like change my name. And they just kind of start like unraveling all these problems that they've had in their relationship, which is like Daisy feels like she's carrying a lot more of like Aza's baggage and doesn't have the ability to share what's going on in her life, and like Aza's not really listening because Aza's dealing with so many things in her own mind, and Aza's like, how do you think it feels to be in my mind like all the time? And then they crash the car. I think they just like the fight itself is like very realistic. Obviously like a lot of problems people have with like John Green characters is that they don't feel realistic and that they talk like philosophers and they talk like adults, and like yeah, which I think is entirely true. We're gonna talk about the ending where I'm like, what 16-year-old is saying this? Tell me right now.
Okay, so I actually forgot to like dive into my thoughts on the ending, so I'm gonna briefly talk about it here. So the ending of the book and the movie is pretty much exactly the same. Basically a kind of long thought about what Aza's life is going to be like after this story is over. And it's just kind of like, it's really dramatic, and, or I guess melodramatic is a better word, about how she's gonna live and she's gonna love and she's gonna experience everything that life has to offer, and sometimes it's gonna be bad and sometimes it's gonna be good, and it's just like really generic of like anything that can happen in a life. It's just like leaving it open-ended but also just giving you a bookend to her life. So it's really weird. It's also really weird that in the movie her best friend Daisy is the one saying all this to her and like telling her how her life is gonna be in the future, and you see this montage of like the actress who plays Aza like being pregnant and like getting married, and it's like, it's so freaking strange. So I just found it so weird, like that's how this book chose to end. I think it was better if it was just like left open-ended and rather than like have this big supposed future for the characters. And it feels really weird coming from a teenager to say all this stuff. So that's my thoughts on the ending. Just thought I should share before I get to my next bit.
What I really love about the fight itself is it feels so real and it feels very true to this friendship. And I think having a friendship fight in this story just made the friendship stronger to me. Like that it meant so much more, because like I really love that. I love Daisy's character. I think she not only like, I mean, she obviously serves that a bit as a bit of a comic relief character, which I think is so fun because like I've always loved the nurse. The way they talk about the Tempest in this, why do they talk about the Tempest so much? Oh my god, I forgot to talk about Davis's blog. Sorry. I'm not gonna mention Davis's blog one more time, but Davis's blog and him staring at the camera reading his blog post made me want to kill myself. Anyway, but I think she's such a great character. Like she's a writer. She's like such a great contrast to Aza because she's more like free-spirited and more adventurous, and I really like her. I think she's such a strong character. I love her. I love her in both the movie and the book. I think she's great. I think we kind of forget about her in the middle, like I said. I think we definitely forget about her in the middle of the movie, and I missed her and I was like, where's Daisy? I love her and she's great. Okay, and then the last thing that I'm gonna talk about before we talk about OCD and anxiety is privilege and class, which I think is dealt with really interestingly. So this is set in Indiana. This is set in Indiana. And obviously we have the huge jumps in social class of like Davis, the billionaire's kid. And then we have kind of like, he goes to a private school and he has this money and he goes and plays croquet. Whatever. And then you have like the other kids like Aza, Daisy, Michael, that all go to the public school and like they are more like lower class. Like it kind of feels like Aza's like more middle class. Like, but what I really love that they talk about in this book is they get this windfall. They literally, it's so crazy because they get $100,000, Daisy and Aza get $100,000 collectively. And the way they choose to spend their money or save their money or whatever is really interesting to me. And the way they talk about it is also really interesting because Daisy is mad mad that Asa felt that she was spending frivolously when she got a car. Oh, she got a car and she got a laptop. And Asa was like, what the heck? Like, don't spend all your money, gotta save it for college. They have this conversation, which I think is in their fight, but it could be after. I don't recall. Daisy's like, you have privileges you're not even recognizing. Like, you think we're on the same level. Like, you don't have to share a room. You have a car. Like, you have a laptop. Like, you have all these things. You just never like think about seeing it from my perspective. And that's really interesting because we're not having that conversation about the literal billionaire, but we're having it within these like other, like not as 1% of the population. We're having it in these like other classes perspectives. And it's really, really interesting. And I don't think John Green does it in any of his other books, but I think it's really fascinating. And I think it's a great discussion. And it just like also kind of like helps to see like where these two characters are coming from and add to more of their character depth as well. And I love it. I think it's so great. So great to have that conversation. So, and then obviously the last thing I want to talk about is the anxiety and OCD representation. So like I said, I do have anxiety, so that was relatable to me. I don't have OCD, so I could not speak to that representation, but I do know that John Green suffers from anxiety and OCD, and that's kind of why he wrote this book. I kind of loved in the book when I was reading it and when I read it the first time and when I read it this last time of like how John Green is able to write a spiral like of thoughts, like a thought spiral in such a perfect and eloquent way. Because the thing about like when your thoughts are spiraling and your thoughts are racing and things like that, it's really hard to like pin those things down and like make them make sense, because the thoughts themselves, like when you're like having an anxiety attack or like something like that, aren't making sense. They're not making sense. So like I really appreciated how John Green was able to make the thought spirals that he was writing make sense, like how like the thoughts connected and it's like, oh, I'm looking at this and it makes me think of this. He's especially around like germs and like concerning herself with getting some sort of like virus and disease, and she's just like thinking in circles. And thinking in circles is a really hard thing to describe, and I think it's described really well in the book. And that's something that I really enjoyed about reading the book, and I think it's done really well. And I was kind of like, this feels like an anxiety attack. Like it feels like you are anxious, and the way you read it too kind of keeps getting faster and faster and faster. Yeah, I thought that was done really well. And so what I anticipated in going into the movie was I was like, okay, there's probably gonna be a voiceover and we're probably going to just like hear her internal monologue through this voiceover, and that's how we're gonna get her anxieties of like what she's thinking. And as predicted, that's what happened. I mean, I'm not a genius or anything, but I can predict a voiceover or two. But what I really liked about the movie is obviously they have kind of this thought spiral, Asa having these thoughts and these anxieties. And I like that like the cadence of her voice would like speed up as she was talking. And then like there's also this other voice. If you don't have anxiety, this probably makes no sense to you. There's obviously like the one part of your brain that's like spiraling and having all these thoughts. And then there's the other part of your brain that's like, stop it. You're like, stop. And so I really liked the different kind of voices the actress put on to do those different parts of her inner monologue, and kind of like the one that's talking back at the voice and the one that's talking. And I really liked that. And I also really liked the like split cuts. I also really liked the cuts to kind of not necessarily like what she was talking about, but I don't know, there were all these like germ pictures, germ images. Like it made you feel a little bit more, I think, of what Asa was feeling. Because I think like, obviously when you're reading a book, you can just kind of picture those things. When you're watching a movie, I think having the visual there is really interesting. And it also kind of like helps you to see what she's picturing like in her head. So having like the kind of like squirmy little microorganism guys going across the screen and stuff were really interesting, and I really liked that kind of addition. And I kind of liked how they played with a bit of reality in that sense of like, you're going into her brain, and then there's parts where it kind of gets fuzzy or distorted or kind of gets like a kaleidoscope, and it like not like when you're not feeling real in your reality, because there's a lot of like derealization thoughts about happening in Asa's mind. I really liked how they kind of visually represented that in the movie. I feel like they don't really dive into derealization, which I think that could be really interesting. It's a 2-hour movie. It's okay. It's a 2-hour movie. Obviously, we have some great representation of therapy and getting help for mental illness, like hospitalization and things like that, which I just wanted to touch on because I think that those are really, really important. I think it's just so important to have like good representations of those things. Obviously, like, what do I say about like the healthcare system? Like, healthcare is what it is, and like there's not going to be a universal experience for everyone, and not everyone's going to have the best experience, but it's really great to see like someone coming out of an experience and having a good experience with the mental health care system, being in therapy and being hospitalized and such like that. So I think those representations are super important. So I did want to touch on that. And I do lastly want to say that I love Ace's character. I think she's so great. I really appreciate that in both the movie and the book, like, she is not her mental illness. That's really hard to do. She just like is so curious and has such a vast array of knowledge. And in the movie, they show it through her watching a bunch of TED Talks and like being like wanting to go to this lecture and being kind of obsessed with this one professor. That's kind of how they show it in the movie. But in the book, like, she's just always like Googling things, and obviously it comes from anxiety. Let's be clear about that. But she just like knows so much and like wants to learn more. And that's part of like the journey of like wanting to go to college and not having enough money for college, and that being so important to her. So I really like that, and I think she's a great character, and I do love her a lot. Protect her at all costs. Okay, so I think those are all my thoughts about the Turtles book and movie. The last thing I kind of say in these videos typically is whether or not you should watch the adaptation. But I do think if Turtles All the Way Down is your favorite book and you love very specific moments in the book, I would say probably best to keep that memory and preserve that and not watch the movie. I think like if you have a passing interest, like I just have a passing interest in John Green, like especially like movies, like Looking for Alaska is like my book and my TV show, and I love them both so dearly. But like other than that, like I had no like, I don't know, I had no special connection to this book. So watching the movie like didn't really damage any of what I'd read before. So I think that like if you love the book, like it's your favorite book in the world, probably don't watch the movie. But if you have an interest, like I think it's so interesting to watch a movie of like people aren't making like this genre like doesn't really exist anymore. But I do think it's just like a teen movie that is not being made anymore, like a type of teen movie that's not being made anymore. And that's sad, but it also just feels like of a different time. So I think it's really fascinating to watch in the 2020s when it feels like in the 2010s. So I would say read the book. Definitely read the book. If you're a John Green fan, if you like kids that talk like adults, if you like mental health representation, and you like a billionaire subplot, that's what I would say is my pitch to read Turtles All the Way Down. And honestly, like, and if you just like a little bit of a billionaire romance, and I know you do, maybe watch the movie. Just watch the movie. But it's honestly cuter in the books. The romance is literally cuter in the book. In the movie, it's more there, but it's less cute. Does that make sense? Anyway, those are my final thoughts about Turtles. I will be coming back to you with some reactions, some reading reviews, and some movie, book, TV show reviews in the future. But luckily, the audio recorded on this. But yeah, I love making these videos. They're my favorite things to do. I love talking about books and their adaptations. It's like literally my favorite thing. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you've seen the Turtles movie and what you thought of it. And with that being said, I will see you on my very next video. Bye!